Welcome into Around the Felt. We're going to be recapping the Los Angeles Rams tonight, their 2024 season. Me and my co-host, as you can see, Mr. Colin Tong, we're going to be recapping their 2024 season, and then we're going to get a little bit into 2025. I know free agency's over at this point, but we're going to talk about kind of where we'd like to see them go in the draft. But Colin, what is a Monday night in the middle of March look like for you? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I just got off of work very late, so we're recording at 9.
What?
So to see your face, I know I don't say this often, but it feels pretty damn good.
What? That's cool. I mean, I know I was cracking down on you and Dave recently about, putting in more work with the podcast, but I mean, hell yeah, man. If you were working all day doing stuff for the podcast, I love to hear it. I mean, that and that I'm going to talk to all you bosses out there. If you're a boss like me, like sometimes you just got to crack the whip on your employees and get them to go. All right. They'll do it like good boys.
But you will be happy to know that Big Tongue Mock Draft 1.0 is almost at the finish line. A couple more picks at the end of the first round, so I've been working on that as well. Hopefully all you guys will tune into that, and I'll do a pod for that as well, so should be a good time. But yeah, I've been grinding the mock draft. We're at pick 29 for the Washington Commanders right now.
Oh, so the Rams fans tonight and the rest of the NFC West, when we get those videos out, will get a little preview.
Yes, that is true, right? I'm going to point out in each pick here who I have in Big Tong's Mock 1.0, who I'd like for each team in the NFC West to grab, starting with the Rams in this video. So I'm looking forward to it. And the guy I got pegged for the Rams, I think, is a phenomenal fit for this offense. A little teaser.
Yeah, no, that's great. But why don't you start us off? What letter grade did you give the Rams for their 2024 season?
I gave the Rams a B+. I think that's a pretty fair grade. A 10-7 season, a division championship. When you consider the amount of injuries they had early on, especially along the offensive line in front of Stafford, who's not the most mobile quarterback. When you consider that Kupp got hurt, that Nacua got hurt, and this team battled, they do under Sean McVay, find ways to win. When you look at them offensively and defensively, they weren't necessarily elite in any category. They were kind of middle of the pack. But when you have a veteran quarterback like Stafford and a Super Bowl winning quarterback like Stafford and head coach in Sean McVay, you're a team that could win close games and just get it done. They beat who they're supposed to beat. They destroyed Minnesota in the wild card round. I think a lot of us were shocked at how big of a beatdown that was. They gave Philly the best run for their money in the postseason. Like they were right there from having a chance to win that game. It was crazy looking back because then Philly beat up on the Commanders and blew out the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So you got to tip the cap to the Rams there in that regard. How they've retooled this team. They went all in for the Super Bowl. They got it done. And they, obviously lost Aaron Donald to retirement, traded away Jalen Ramsey. Now Cooper Kupp's gone. Like they've rebuilt this team, but they've retooled and they're so good at drafting that, their defensive line of Kobe Turner, Jared Verse, the defensive rookie of the year, and Braden Fisk is awesome. You got to love the Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams picks late in the draft. Like, you just have a lot of trust in Les Snead and Sean McVay that they're going to build a contending team year in and year out. So for me, the fact that they got to divisional round, they're always sneaky to make the playoffs. But how they got there, destroying Minnesota, overcoming all those injuries, and then really going toe-to-toe with the eventual Super Bowl champs, that's a B+ for me.
Yeah, that's fair. I give them an A-. Similar.
Oh, you're a little bit more bullish than me.
Yeah, because they really did exceed my expectations. I wasn't sure if they would be back in the playoffs, but offensively, they had one of the top offenses, even with losing Nacua early and Kupp being in and out with injuries, and then on the defensive side of the ball, this team in the playoffs alone, I believe, had 15 sacks or whatever it was. Like they were on pace to set records, and it was only in 2 games.
Oh my goodness,
and,
yeah.
Like you said, they were the one team that really gave Philly, I guess, a run for their money. They definitely need to fix that run defense because Saquon Barkley, I think, went for 500 yards almost in 2 games against them.
Yeah.
So that is definitely a big issue. The pass rush is there. The secondary
is
is not terrible. But yeah, it's definitely a big hole for them. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But, this defense definitely is a lot of young talent. you would forget, you almost forget about Aaron Donald because with the pass pressure they've been able to get this past year, it was like, whoa, like, is he still there? But it's cool that they went with Verse and Fisk in the first and second round, like keeping those two teammates together seems like a pretty good recipe for success.
Oh, absolutely. You already have some team chem built along that defensive line.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I gave him an A minus. I mean, I did not think they would win the division at all, and obviously they did. And they were almost they were toe to toe with the Eagles, and if they ultimately won that game, I mean, then they're hosting a home playoff game. And I'm not going to make excuses for them, but I mean, there's definitely the mental aspect that goes into because a lot of people may forget, but like those LA wildfires were going on like during that time. So you almost feel bad for the players because it's like these guys are worrying about like their homes and their families and their loved ones that are out there. And it's like there are fires going on all throughout LA. And a lot of people are like, fuck those people. Like they're these rich billionaires, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, the whole human element goes into it. So that's another thing where it's like you gotta remember that as well. And it would have been interesting too, because they obviously had to move their home playoff game and play in Arizona, and they killed Minnesota in technically a neutral site game. So that's
a good
another
point.
thing where you got to give them credit for that too, because they didn't even have a home playoff game when they normally would have. It became a neutral game, and you would have thought it was a home playoff game after looking at the end of the score.
That's a great point, Reagan. And I appreciate the human aspect coming out of you. You might not look like it, but you're a big old teddy bear.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not robot, human here.
Yeah, so you want to dive into this off season?
Yeah. I think so.
Well, I mean, obviously the big news for them, priority number one, bringing back Matthew Stafford. That whole, dating game that he played, speaking with the Giants, speaking with the Raiders, kind of gauging how much money they're going to give him. And ultimately, what happened was probably the Rams gave him a little bit more money. He still took less than both the Raiders and the Giants were going to offer him, but they found a common ground to make sure he stays in LA. I think that's the best thing for both sides. To be honest with you, it never really made sense for him to leave to go to a team like the Giants or Raiders who are both picking top 6 in the draft, right? Like your best chance to win now is in LA. It's where you won a Super Bowl. You're 37 years old. This made a lot of sense for both parties. They then released Cooper Kupp, used that money
also
to sign
with Adams real quick. You say like teams like the Raiders and the Giants, but I feel like everyone was just saying like, oh, he's going wherever Rodgers is, but I think
I'm talking about Matthew Stafford.
Oh, for some reason in my head, I don't know why I thought you said for some reason in my head I thought you were talking about Devante Adams because
I was talking about Stafford.
I don't know why I thought you said Adams because technically like those were spots that people were talking about Adams going as well because they're like, oh, like if Rodgers goes to the Giants or if Rodgers wants to go to the Raiders, like Devante's going with him.
No, yeah, but I was about to say they released Cooper Kupp and used that money to bring in Devante Adams.
Yeah, never mind.
Yeah,
sorry.
So now it's Stafford, Kyren, and you got Devante Adams and Puka Nacua out wide. They added Poona Ford to a already strong defensive line, so that's another thing. But really, not a very noisy
game.
Yeah, it should. I mean, that's a good signing for him.
Yeah, that's kind of why they do. I mean, like I said, Saquon Barkley goes for like 500 yards in 2 games. It's like, all right, we need to get some beef on that interior. And with the whole Devante thing, I mean, that is a massive upgrade. I know him and Kupp are the same age, and Cooper Kupp is, it will be considered a Rams legend. I'm sure he'll be in their Ring of Honor. But Devante Adams at this point, like after seeing both these guys last year, it's pretty clear like they're on different levels. I mean. For me, it sucks. In a dynasty league, I have Adams, Puka, and Kyren. So that kind of sucks.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
But this is a high-powered offense, man. I mean, we saw that this team hang up 40-plus on Buffalo. So it's a high-powered offense for sure. But I really do like the Adams signing. I still think Puka will be the number one. It's not like Stafford and Adams have that rapport like we saw with Adams and Rodgers, where it's like, all right, Garrett Wilson, like you're taking a back seat. Like Adams is now the guy and he's going to get ultra targeted and you're kind of going to fall into that number 2 role. I don't think that happens here. Nacua still will be his guy, but it was clear like Kupp started to falter. Like he didn't have a bad game against the Eagles, but prior to that, he was just non-existent for like a 5-6 game stretch dating back to the regular season.
I agree. And I think at this point of their careers, like just looking at last season, Adams definitely has more in the tank than Kupp, I think. it also could be kind of what they're looking for in their offense. Like they maybe want a younger guy to take on that Kupp role, working more in the slot when Adams is going to be an outside receiver.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern is they really haven't addressed, and this could be, we could talk about this when we get into the draft, but they don't really have a lot of speed. I know they paid Tutu well, they re-signed him on the 1-year, $10 million contract, but they do not have a lot of speed because Puka and Devante Adams are not fast guys. And Kyron's not a fast running back either, and neither is
No,
Blake
he's
Corum.
not. Yeah.
So they really don't have a lot of speed. I mean, those guys are obviously talented in their own right, but I would like this team to address in the draft. If you're ready to segue into that, but I would love to see this
let's
team
do
address, even if it's in the first round, like with Matthew Golden, take him as your number 3 wide receiver, a speedster. I mean, the fastest guy in the 40-yard dash, because this team is lacking speed. They need a speed guy, and it'll open up more. And those 2 stud wide receivers that you could debate are like top 5 in the league right now are going to open up a ton for that speedster as well. So I think that's what this offense is missing. Is just a fast motherfucker on the outside.
Some dude with wheels, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
unless you're convinced Tutu Atwell's that guy.
No, I'm not. I went receiver for the Rams in my mock. However, Matthew Golden was off the board. I went with Emeka Ibuka out of Ohio State, a guy that can work out of the slot, who's played with several NFL quarterbacks and wide receivers during his tenure at Ohio State, has been extremely consistent throughout his time for the Buckeyes. Yeah, he didn't have like a 1,500-yard season. No, he didn't have a 340-yard game like JSN. But year in and year out, this dude was reliable and was probably the number 2 wide receiver on every team that he was a part of. And there's also a factor where how often do Ohio State wide receivers miss, Reagan?
That is true.
Like,
I mean,
you know what I mean? He just seems like he's a dude that was a leader in the Buckeye locker room. He's a guy that works his ass off. And I think at his pro day, he's going to run in the 4.4s, which, okay, he's not a burner like Golden where he's running in the 4.2s, but that's plenty of speed to win at the level.
What the fuck? I was trying
to look it up. What's going on there, Reagan? What are you doing?
I was trying to see. I was trying to see what he ended up running, but you beat me to the punch about the pro day. All right, there's an ad playing. What the? All right, there we go. But I was trying to see what his 40-yard dash was, because that's, to me, what's really missing from this offense. Because Adams and Nacua could really do it all, but neither guy has that burner speed. So those would that would be my of interest there. I mean, you could always trade back. I've been a big proponent of a lot of these teams trading back, especially because there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks. I mean, and speaking of that, you could always draft Matthew Stafford's replacement as well and let him sit for a couple of years. I mean, if you're convinced, like, hey, Jackson Dart, like, let him sit, we'll make sure we get that 5th-year option. It's never a bad idea. Let him develop a couple of years. And it's like, all right, well, that's why we drafted him in the first round, because you have that extra year, like with the Packers with Jordan Love. Maybe it was a reach, but they had that 5th-year option, so they knew when it was time to pay him that, it was the right decision.
That's an interesting landing spot for Dart. I don't want to cut you off, but that's an interesting landing spot for Dart. My only thing is, I think it would make sense for the Rams, but then it's like you got Stafford in this short window, and it's like, don't you want to do what you can to maximize his window? And I guess that was the pushback when the Packers took Jordan Love. But also in this draft, there's still a lot of teams that are pretty desperate for long-term solutions, where a team like the Rams are probably not as desperate, where I could see another team pulling the trigger before they have the opportunity to take a Jackson Dart.
It's just the thing with Stafford. Like, Stafford's a free agent after 2026, so he's got 2 years left. So it's, they could wait, but it's like at a certain point, it's like, 2 years. You let a guy sit for 2 years, then he's still got 3 years left where you know for sure, like, are we going to pay him that big extension after the 5th year or not?
That makes sense. I got it.
So I just think it's an underrated quarterback landing spot in the first, 3 rounds. I could see them definitely, because I think at this start, like Stetson Bennett, who they took a while back, like,
oh, he's done.
He's never touching the field. Like, that's the last like young quarterback I remember them taking. If they're going to go on the defensive side of the ball, like you said, linebacker wouldn't be bad if you want to go Campbell, Jahad Campbell from Alabama. Yeah, there's some other decent guys. I mean, I could see them maybe going safety or corner as well. I mean, and obviously the offensive line, it's never a bad idea either to get one of those guard tackle flexible guys that, some of those undersized guys that can kind of play both ways. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, I was going to say, if they attack the trenches on either side of the ball, I wouldn't be shocked either. They can go a lot of directions here. They could also go secondary.
I would be shocked if they attack the trenches on the defensive side of the ball. They put so much draft capital in the past couple of years into that, and you go out and get Poona Ford. I would be very shocked if they. I mean, I guess when you're in that spot, it's like if there's somebody that falls, it's like, all right, best available. But I mean, you've taken so many, first round and day 2 guys over the past couple of years that it's like at a certain point you got to go elsewhere.
Reagan, you can never take too many pass rushers, man.
No, I understand. It's just they have so many more.
When the Eagles took Nolan Smith 2 years ago, did they need another pass rusher? No. But he was on their board and he was staring them in the face. And this is a loaded edge class. It's a loaded edge class.
I think that they won't, but if somebody's there, like I just think they have bigger issues. But you're right. I mean, if somebody falls and it's like, listen, we're getting a good deal. I mean, they are one of those teams that's in their win now window, and does another pass rusher help? Yeah, it obviously always does. So it'll be interesting. But I'm just saying, don't rule out quarterback in the first 3 rounds.
I like it. Let's bring Drock in here. What do we got for questions, Drock?
What's up, gentlemen?
Hey.
I'm in a very good mood today. I had my Saratoga water and my banana peels covering my face.
Whoa! Did you do it at 4 a.m. or no?
Yes, obviously. And then I jumped to the pool at 7:36 and was in the pool until 7.
What are you guys? What do you mean banana peels?
Did you not see this, bro?
You're not on the trend, bro.
It's the most viewed tweet. It's the most viewed tweet in the history of Twitter. It's got I checked yesterday. It had 550 million views in 3 days.
And what is
it's a video of some dude going morning routine, and he's getting up at 4 a.m. and he's getting a certain water, Saratoga water. He's it's one of those where every second's a new time, and he's doing something different, and he's Saratoga water, dunking his face in an ice ball, rubbing banana peels on his face, going for a swim. His shirt's off the whole time. He's jacked, trying to flex.
Oh, I did see that. I saw. It was some big jack dude, and he dumped his head. He's wearing a suit and dumped his head in the water, in front of the computer screen.
Yeah.
Dude,
too funny. I don't want to talk more about it. I got a question for you guys, but dude, honestly, that dude just made Saratoga a fucking billion-dollar company. My one question for you guys tonight for the Rams: is SoFi Stadium more of a tourist attraction than a true home field advantage for the Rams?
Whoa! Drock's throwing shade with his question tonight. I was not expecting that either. I mean, I haven't been to SoFi Stadium. It looks really nice. I mean, I know it's a big thing, and just with the LA teams in general, it's not. They don't have much of a home field advantage because the Rams coming from St. Louis, the Chargers from San Diego, that's where their diehard OG fans are. So when teams go and play in LA, they don't really feel like they're in Seattle or Kansas City, for example, right? Where teams with a very strong home fan base. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they won a Super Bowl playing some home playoff games. I guess they didn't need to this year play a home playoff game to get the job done. But yeah, I don't think it's something that holds them back, Reagan. What do you think?
I mean, it definitely doesn't help. I mean, they definitely have a bigger fandom out there than the Chargers from everything I've heard. I mean, it does seem like you see a lot of celebrities going to the game, and they get those little VIP clubs down there where it's we're here. But I also feel like that's what you see for all the LA teams. I mean, you see a celebrity row at the Lakers games, and the Kings games for hockey, and even for the Dodgers games. So I think there's always and with LA, there's always a couple teams, and there's the one big team in LA, and then there's the little brother team, So, and it seems the Rams are LA's team, and the Chargers kind of are the little brother, because from everything I've heard, the Chargers really don't have a home field crowd, and most of their games are always away games.
Yeah, I feel like the Rams have more of a fan base for sure at home than the Chargers do.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know. It's just because the Chargers didn't even have a good fan base when they were in San Diego. That's why they moved. I mean, the Rams had a pretty big following from everything I've understood in St. Louis. That wasn't the big reason for them moving. It's just you can make way more money in LA than you can in St. Louis.
Yeah, businessman Reagan getting the job done.
That wraps up. I was just gonna say, if I was like a big time influencer, like I'd totally go to like, a Rams game and make some TikToks and dance and shit, Fuck it.
Yeah, well, maybe McVay will hear this pod and send you some tickets.
Yeah, please, please, please.
Well, that wraps up our LA Rams 2024 off-season recap and off-season outlook.